Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congressman Mike Levin. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me once again.
Thank you, Brittany. Good to be with you.
It was a busy week. We have a wide-ranging conversation in store, but I want to start with an amendment that you introduced during a House Appropriations Committee meeting. You introduced what you called the Respect America's Constitution Amendment. To start off the conversation, talk to us about it.
Well, this was a really simple amendment, and I have my pocket constitution right here, Brittany. And in the Constitution, it's very clear Congress has the power of the purse. Article 1, Section 9, no money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. It's as simple as that. So I offered what I thought was going to be a really straightforward amendment just to reaffirm that Congress, and only Congress, has the power to spend taxpayer dollars or to choose not to spend taxpayer dollars. And I was shocked, I was stunned when my Republican colleagues voted no on the amendment. I still honestly don't understand. What you have right now is a situation where the Trump administration, and specifically the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, is calling the shots. And Congress, unfortunately, under this Republican majority, is not. I know that over the decades, Democrats and Republicans alike have wanted to support their presidents, their administrations, but I've talked to people who have been in the Congress for 30 years, for 40 years. They've never seen anything like this at all, where basically the Congress is flying blind. And as Chairman Tom Cole, who I have great admiration and respect for Chairman Cole, but as he said, they're making recommendations. Well, no, we're not. We're on the Appropriations Committee of the House of Representatives. And as I told my colleagues, I looked them in the face and I said, what are you afraid of? You were duly elected, each of you, by 750,000 Americans to serve as their representative, to be good stewards of their taxpayer dollars, to decide what programs would be authorized and how to appropriate the funds. And then it's up to the president to faithfully execute the laws, but not to figure out what the laws are. It's ultimately up to the Congress to do that. So we've not seen anything like this, Brittany. It is a wholesale abdication of the constitutional responsibility that has stood the test of time in this country for hundreds of years. I hope that this is a low point. I hope that Congress begins to get its relevance again. And this shouldn't have anything to do with your party preference. This is all about checks and balances and upholding the Constitution of the United States. And I'm still stunned that they voted against it.
And every one of your Republican colleagues on the House Appropriations Committee voted against it. And you raised the alarm bells over this. This is what you said. If we don't defend the power of the purse right now, right here, we may never get it back. Talk to us about that, because that sounds like, hey, if we don't make this action now, it's over. This is a really slippery slope.
Well, the appropriations process has been broken for quite some time. We go from, what's called a continuing resolution to, basically punt at current spending levels. We do that again and again and again. This is no way to fund the government of what is supposed to be the strongest democracy the world over, the strongest military the world over, and they know that. But what is happening is they have given up their power willingly, knowingly, to the Trump administration. And I get it. They support the Trump administration. I get it. But it's one thing to support your president and another to forget that you're a co-equal branch of government. We, as legislators, are Article 1, Brittany. The legislative branch is Article 1. On purpose, the founders made it Article 1. The executive branch is Article 2. And I just don't know how we got so sideways. My point to my colleagues was, if we don't take action to reaffirm that we are a co-equal branch of government, duly elected by the people, then we run the risk of falling so far down this slippery slope that we will not have the constitutional republic that we have enjoyed, that has made us the envy of the world for 250 years. I am deeply concerned. I worry our institution in the House is badly broken. And I pointed all around our committee room, because we have all the portraits of all of the past committee chairs. And I said, what would they say to you? These are Republicans, these are Democrats who have served as chairs of the House Appropriations Committee over all these decades, 250 years. What would they say to those in the room? I believe by and large they would say, affirm that you are a co-equal branch of government. For goodness sakes, the Congress of the United States, don't just give up your power.
One of your Republican colleagues explained why he was not supporting this amendment, Congressman John Carter, and I want to read part of what he said. He said this, quote, "This amendment is an attempt to tie the hands of President Trump and his administration's work to cut waste, fraud, and abuse." What do you make of that argument?
Well, it's not that we want to tie the hands of President Trump. The Constitution ties the hands of President Trump by design. There are checks and balances. We are co-equal branches of government. If they want to fund appropriations consistent with the president's directive or value, that is up to them as elected representatives, but they need to work with us. We have as a role and responsibility under the Constitution, the power of the purse, the power to appropriate funds. And it's not about tying hands. As members of Congress, we're not doing anything other than upholding our constitutional duty. This is about the oath of office that we all take. And look, I have great respect for Judge Carter. He's a decent and honorable public servant. On this, we just have a huge disagreement.
Congressman, my last point is something that struck me is the timing of this, because you posted a video of yourself speaking to the Appropriations Committee, and the timestamp on that video was 12:24 a.m. And I'm a night owl myself. I like staying up at night. I find I get my best work done in the middle of the night. But I mean, for transparency's sake, what do you make of the timing? What do you make of working on what you're calling a really important amendment in the middle of the night?
Well, I am a morning person, Brittany, so I was not so enthused about staying up. And look, we've had late night after late night after late night there in the Appropriations Committee, and I agree with you. I think these topics are far too important. And here's the thing, there will not be a floor vote because Mike Johnson would never allow a floor vote on something like this, on the power of the purse. This is the only time in this process through House Appropriations where the minority can offer amendments during a markup that need to be considered by the full committee. So this is the one shot that we're going to have this year in all likelihood to reaffirm that Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution still needs to be addressed, needs to be upheld. And it's stunning to me. We were there until all hours of the day and night. We took a little break for the congressional baseball game on Wednesday, which I participated in. We took a little break here and there, but by and large, it was a crazy week. And I think we're going to have a few more crazy weeks because there are 12 appropriations bills. And we got through the Military Construction Veterans Affairs bill, and we got through the defense bill and about half of the agriculture bill. And that's it. There's still, 10 and a half to go.
Well, I would love to pick your brain on more appropriations news as it comes up. But as you mentioned, this has really been a crazy week, a lot of breaking news, and I would love to pick your brain on some of it. I want to start with an incident we saw yesterday with Senator Alex Padilla. FBI officers physically removed him from a press conference held by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem in LA on Thursday as he attempted to shout questions at her. After he was escorted out of the room, he then was put on the ground and handcuffed. What do you make of the incident?
Well, it was surreal to me. I was sitting in the Appropriations Committee room during the markup, watching the clip of Senator Padilla over and over again, trying to understand what had happened. And let me just first say that Senator Padilla and I have known each other since our 20s. He's 5 years older than I am. He is a decent and honorable public servant, and in general is a very mild-mannered person. And I understand the circumstances as follows. In that federal building, Senator Padilla has an office. He wanted to see the press conference with Secretary Noem. He was allowed into the room by law enforcement. There was clearly a lack of communication or coordination between whoever let him in that room and the U.S. Secret Service detail protecting Secretary Noem. because it appears that that detail did not know who Alex Padilla, the senior senator from California, was. And they were protecting Kristi Noem as they, are supposed to. Now, here's the thing. I've been interrupted at town halls and press conferences over the years. So in that circumstance, if you know who that person is who is interrupting you, it could be, somebody that you've seen before, somebody that you recognize, you give them the space to speak and you tell them, I'm going to need you to calm down. Otherwise, we're going to have to ask you to leave. And then if they refuse, at that point, you may need to get law enforcement involved. In this instance, it is inconceivable that Kristi Noem did not know who Senator Alex Padilla is. Senator Padilla is the ranking member on the on the immigration subcommittee, directly relevant, the subcommittee of direct jurisdiction that oversees Noem's work. So of course she knew who he was. She absolutely knew who he was. Then after they, get him out and they put him on the ground, they put him in handcuffs. The reporting that I've seen suggested Corey Lewandowski was the one to say, let him go. And, you can read into that whatever you like. And they let him go, now knowing that he's a United States Senator. He's saying all the time, I'm a United States Senator. Others in that room knew who he was, by the way. I'll buy that those Secret Service officers did not, that they were doing their job protecting Secretary Noem. But the other thing is, I was really taken aback by Dan Bongino's post about all this, saying that Senator Padilla wasn't wearing his pin. So here's the thing. We have these pins, members of the House, members of the Senate. We don't have to wear them outside of the Capitol of the United States. I'm wearing mine right now because I wanted to look nice for my interview with you, but I don't have to wear this pin just out there in a community in my district. It is my identification in the Capitol, not outside of the Capitol. And so Senator Padilla was not wearing his pin, but he didn't have to be wearing his pin, for goodness sake. So that wasn't a good reason at all from Dan Bongino's comment. So all that being said, I think that Secretary Noem really, she very easily could have de-escalated the situation. She knew it was Senator Padilla, and she chose to go right on speaking. If you watch that video, she didn't pause for 1 second. She kept speaking. She knew what was happening, and she was fine with it happening. And she didn't even apologize to Padilla after. The whole thing is surreal to me, having known Senator Padilla for 20 years. And as I've said the last couple of days, if you're critical of this administration, they don't want to hear that criticism. This is what we see in countries other than the United States of America. This is not American at all. And if it can happen to a senior U.S. senator, it can happen to anybody.
I want to move on to the events that probably were the impetus behind that back and forth. And those are protests in Los Angeles. And protests in the city broke out starting last week over workplace ICE raids. And then President Trump, against Governor Gavin Newsom's wishes, deployed the National Guard to the city. He then deployed thousands more of troops, both Marines and additional National Guard members. What do you make of A, the protests there, and B, the president's response?
Well, first, we condemn all violent actions. What we need to see is peaceful rally, peaceful dissent. That's patriotic. That's as patriotic as anything in this country, to voice your opinion in a peaceful way. So anybody who's out there who's violent or destructive does need to be arrested. And just the same, we want for those who are in the country who are undocumented, who are drug dealers, criminals, gang members, human traffickers, we want them gone. We want their claims adjudicated consistent with due process, but then if they are found guilty, we want them out. So we share that common goal. But what's happening here is obviously something far different than that. What started all of this is the belief that Stephen Miller, because of this quota, this arbitrary quota that he set, 3,000 a day, and because he and Noem were telling the agents that the bottom 10%, in terms of the number of arrests and deportations, the bottom 10% were going to be fired. So think of that. They set an arbitrary quota, and they turned this whole thing into a scoreboard rather than a security mission. So you're going after, people that are in restaurants, busboys, cooks. You're going after people working in hotels. You're going after, day laborers trying to find a job in front of Home Depot. So the situation obviously escalated. There were agitators that acted entirely inappropriately, and the thing continued to build and build and build. But I think that the Trump administration's actions exacerbated a lot of this. And when they called in the Guard under Title 10, I think they did so prematurely. As the district court said, without the consent of the governor, it was illegal and wrong for them to have done it. Of course, it's being appealed, and pending the appeal in the Ninth Circuit, President Trump and his administration still have control temporarily of the Guard. So that was bad enough. But calling in the Marines takes it even a step further. I represent Marines and sailors at Camp Pendleton. I'm incredibly honored to represent them and to support them. They are the best trained lethal fighting force in the world to win wars. They are not trained for domestic law enforcement against civilians. And before this last week, these Marines that were sent from 29 Palms in the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force to Seal Beach outside of LA to get that training, they had not received non-lethal training or civil disobedience training or crowd control training at all. And they got a 4-day training course. That's it. My understanding is that now they're protecting federal buildings, but that they also may be used to protect ICE agents, which I could see getting out of control very quickly. And my great concern is that for 150 years, we have had posse comitatus, meaning that the military cannot conduct civilian law enforcement. There has been a bright line between domestic law enforcement and our military, who are trained to fight and win wars. And unless the Insurrection Act is invoked, which it has not been, because there's not been an insurrection, there's not been a rebellion. And, until that happens, any domestic law enforcement being conducted by either the National Guard or by the Marines is a violation of federal law and should not be accepted by any of us.
Governor Gavin Newsom also denounced any violence, any vandalism, chaos that is taken too far. He wants peaceful protests, but I want to read something that he said. He sued the administration over federalizing the National Guard. He called it authoritarianism and thuggish behavior, and he said it's time for all of us to stand up. And then he added, what Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence. To be complicit in this moment, do not give in to him. What do you make of that? I mean, what do you think people, and especially Californians, you're in California now, what do you think they should do, especially this weekend when more protests are expected?
I would be peaceful, but I would exercise your First Amendment right to voice your opinion. And it's very simple that since 1776, we have not had a monarchy. We have had a republic. In fact, at the Constitutional Convention, Benjamin Franklin was asked what had been created, a monarchy or republic, and he said, a republic if you can keep it. And it's up to all of us in this country, as citizens of this country, to keep it in this moment where it's being tested as it hasn't been since the Civil War, really. And it's a scary time. It's a scary time. I try not to be an alarmist. I try not to exaggerate. I always in my career tried to work across the aisle in good faith with people. I even did that this past week, as difficult as it was. But what we're seeing right now is something very different than I have ever seen in my lifetime, and something that we all have to stand against. Now, what concerns me most is the silence and the fealty that I saw from my Republican colleagues this past week. Those are members of the House of Representatives. And part of it is a reflection of the weakness and the supplication of Speaker Mike Johnson. If you had a strong speaker who was respected by the President of the United States, I think this would be a different situation. But what you have is Mike Johnson, who is seen as whatever Trump wants is what he'll do. He doesn't have, in my view, a backbone. And that is a massive problem because without a backbone, those rank and file members on the other side of the aisle, it's very tough for them to independently grow that backbone if they don't think that leadership will have their back.
When you look at things, when you look at America really in the grand scheme of the world, it's such a young experiment. And when you say the quote, a republic if you can keep it, I mean, when you're looking at the time we're in right now in 2025, President Trump is in his second term. How close do you think we are right now to losing that republic?
Well, look, if you see the invocation of the Insurrection Act by the President of the United States, it is not unrealistic to believe that things will spiral from there. And where they go, I don't even want to think about, but it does keep me up at night, and it should keep you up at night too. We live in this extraordinary country. We have so much to be proud of. And I just want to make sure that the president remembers and that members of Congress, Republican members of Congress, remember we are all Americans. I had one of the other appropriators, Andy Harris from Maryland, he's the chair of the Freedom Caucus. He accused all of us Democrats of having no regard for the military during the appropriations process. And so many of us were so deeply offended by that. We've had members of our family or many of my colleagues have served themselves. How dare they believe that? If you don't show fealty to the President of the United States, you can be a true patriot. I didn't see any of them show fealty to Joe Biden, that's for sure, or to Barack Obama. I didn't question their patriotism at the time. Don't question ours.
I do, before I let you go, just want to get a quick reaction to what we've seen in the Middle East in the past 24 hours, because we saw Israel launch an attack on Iran and they hit nuclear sites as well as military sites. We have since seen Iran respond and retaliate with missile and drone strikes as well. What do you make of that moment? What do you make of Israel's strike?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly concerned about any Americans or American assets in the region. Obviously, Israel is a very important strategic ally of the United States, and Iran, in developing their nuclear weapons program, according to independent reports from the IAEA, were very close to having several nuclear missiles that they could do tremendous harm with, and not just limited to Iran, or not just limited to Israel, the Middle East. But we have to worry about this as Americans. We have to worry about Iranian nuclear capacity. This is a country and a regime that has said death to America, just as they have said death to Israel. So Israel has been in a multi-front war for a very long time with obviously Hamas and Hezbollah, but also Iran, and also with Syria. And so it appeared that this was a successful targeted strike at the Iranian nuclear capabilities, both the scientists and the raw materials necessary to produce nuclear weapons. And I hope and pray that the situation does not spiral there. Just like I worry things could spiral here among our civilian community, I worry things are spiraling abroad as well. It is a dangerous time for the world, but I think Israel has every right to defend itself against imminent attack. When you have a country plotting to destroy you and creating the means to do it, you have the right to defend yourself. I also am very disappointed because I know that the sixth round of negotiations was supposed to occur this weekend to try to come to some sort of agreement for the dismantling of the Iranian nuclear program. And that has to happen. The Iranian regime must give up its nuclear weapons program, full stop. That being said, obviously as somebody who represents tens of thousands of service members, the last thing that I ever want to do is put them in harm's way unnecessarily. and I'm going to do everything I can to reinforce the need for diplomacy and I hope for de-escalation of what is currently a very precarious situation.
Congressman, we will leave it there. I appreciate your time, especially taking some time to talk to me about a very busy week. Thank you so much. You're welcome back anytime.
Thanks, Brittany. Always good to be with you.